Welcome into The Block. I am Alan True, and I am joined by Blake Brockermeyer and Carl Reed. Gentlemen, the CBS Sports and 24/7 Sports first team, or preseason All-American team is out. So Blake, I'll start with you. Immediately, what stands out to you when you look at this first team offense?
The first thing that stands out to me is that it's a really good list. I think that whoever put this together did a great job. There's a lot of the guys that I would have put on the list as well. I think the first and second team guys you could maybe mix and mingle a little bit, and you could have an argument here or there. But I thought it's a great list. I like how Jahmyr Gibbs and Deuce Vaughn were all-purpose backs on the first and second team, and you add that with Bijan and Travion Henderson. Those are in my opinion, the four best backs in the country. And I like the offensive line. I think the first and second team groups have some good players on there. And then the receivers, when you look at the receivers, with Josh Downs and Kayshon Boutte and Michael Mayer as second team picks, those guys are as good as it gets. So it's a great list, and I think it's a very good representation of what the best players in the country are.
Blake, I agree with you here. Top level talent all the way around. When you start talking about the depth at wide receiver, you and I were talking before the show. Is it time on All-American teams to expand from 2 to 4 receivers? Because nobody's playing with 2 receivers anymore. When you talk about the depth of talent at that position, the skill positions here are elite all the way around. Some great interior play on the line. Just a really strong list all the way around.
So we were talking off air about the running backs, and particularly Bijan Robinson. So Blake, is he the best running back in the country? Is he going to be the first guy drafted at that position?
He is the best running back in the country that's draft eligible. I think Travion Henderson is going to be a special back as well, but Bijan will be the first back drafted. He's the best back in the country in my opinion. He didn't play on, an elite football team that's going to, likely win a national championship, but he is the key guy for Texas. He makes everything go. He can run the rock. He can catch the football. He will be the first running back picked, and I don't understand the backlash that people have on Bijan, because he is an incredible talent.
Blake and I go back and forth on this quite a bit, Alan. I like Bijan Robinson. I think he's a great talent, but I want to see more from him this year for Texas. Texas is 5-7. Bijan always didn't play big in some of those big games. I want to see how he does. I'm expecting a big season from him, and I want to see him do more for Texas on the field as it relates to wins before I go and say that he's the best back in the country.
And I know you are both excited to see the two names at tight end on the first and second team offense. So Carl, I'll start with you. Brock Bowers really kicked the door down last year. What stands out about him?
Well, I think anybody who watches this show knows that I have a real man crush on Brock Bowers. I think that if you look up what a football player is supposed to be in the dictionary, his picture is going to be right there next to it. He's elite. He can run great routes. He has toughness. He can block. When you talk about, other than Will Anderson, you could make a argument that Brock Bowers may be the best player in the country outside of Will Anderson. I think he's a special talent. He played big for Georgia last year as a true freshman, and he's going to continue to ascend. We're looking at a guy who's going to be a top 3 or 4 pick in the draft when he's draft eligible.
Yeah, he's a special talent. I'll be curious to see what he looks like coming off an injury. He had some off-season surgery, but I expect him to have a huge year. Michael Mayer, I think, is going to have a even bigger year for Notre Dame this year if they're going to get to where their preseason hype is. With their wide receiver depth that they have right now, only having 5 scholarship guys, he's going to have to almost be a wide receiver for them. And I think he's going to have a big year, and he's going to get drafted in the first round as well.
So we're going to go offensive line, position you're very familiar with. Midwest heavy list, Big Ten heavy list. Any players at that position on the first and second team that stand out to you?
Well, Jarrett Patterson, from what I understand, is not going to play center at Notre Dame. I think he's going to play guard. That's what I've heard at least. And then, so you look at Minnesota's John Michael Schmitz as a guy that might be the next guy up. He's a really good player that's got a lot of experience. We were talking earlier about how long he's been at Minnesota. It feels like he's been there forever.
He was committed to PJ Fleck at Western Michigan out of high school. That's how long he's been around.
And then, Paris Johnson, in my opinion, is going to be the guy that's going to be the first lineman probably picked in the draft this year. He played guard last year, and he's going to kick out to left tackle this year, more of his natural position. I really like him. The second group has some guys on there that I think that have some talent. This Osiris Torrance transfer from Louisiana has got a lot of hype around him. I've heard some really good things about him. And Blake Freeland is the lineman from BYU that I've kind of looked at, and I think he's got a high upside, an incredible athlete that was a multi-sport player in high school. I probably would have put him on this list over Clark Barrington, but I know they both have good reputation, so we'll see what they do on film this year.
It's interesting to see on the first team at running back, you have Bijan and Travion Henderson. I feel like most of the college football landscape knows about them. And then you go into the second team, and you have Deuce Vaughn and Sean Tucker, maybe not as familiar to the world at large. What can you tell us about both Deuce and Sean Tucker?
Well, I love Deuce Vaughn. He's a great all-around back, all-purpose guy. He's a smaller guy, but they use him in a very dynamic way at Kansas State. He's great at running their power O offense, but he also creates incredible mismatches against linebackers in the passing game. When you think about Sean Tucker, a lot of people don't get to watch Syracuse as much. He's up there in a place that's not necessarily a football powerhouse. But Dino Babers, a descendant of that Art Browse offensive family tree, he plays a very hurry-up style. Sean Tucker has been a back that is hard to break down, and he's only a sophomore, but he is emerging as one of the top backs in the nation, and we expect a huge season out of him as well for Syracuse.
Who's the back that if you had to pick another guy, Carl, that you would pick to go up there and represent this team as well?
I would go Allen out of Wisconsin. I think that you could easily put him on the second team right here. I don't know which guy you replace. I don't want a fan base to go crazy on me, but I would have definitely picked Allen out of Wisconsin, running behind that big offensive line. He's a guy that's going to have a bright NFL future as well, and so I think he easily fits into this equation.
One guy that I've kind of got my eye on is Zach Evans at Ole Miss. I mean, I think Zach Evans is an incredible talent. He's got a size-speed combination that's rare. It'll be curious to see how Lane Kiffin uses him at Ole Miss, but I think he's a guy that he hadn't really done it like consistently over the course of a season, but I think if he puts it together, he could have a big year for them.
Well, Deuce Vaughn is on here twice. He's on here as the all-purpose back and as the second-team running back, so maybe we could find room for one of those guys moving forward. But let's go over to the defensive side of the ball. On this first-team defense, you got two guys from Iowa, one from Iowa State. But the defensive line, let's start there. Brian Brzee, former top recruit, he's at Clemson, but I know there were a couple of other guys on that defense, Blake, that you felt could have been mentioned here as well.
Yeah, Miles Murphy to me is the better defensive lineman of the two. I think he has proven it a little bit longer. He's healthy. He plays on the edge, so there's obviously some great edge players here. Again, this list to me is a little bit kind of outdated. I mean, I think to only put 3 defensive linemen on here is kind of strange because I mean people do play with 3, but there should be 4, and so that's the one guy that I would have put on the first team that I think is deserving of that. But I think it's a very good representation of the first team. With like you said, Iowa having 2 guys, it just shows you Iowa is just one of those teams that just has their way of doing things and just find a way to win 8, 9, 10 games a year. It's impressive. And Jack Campbell, he led the country in tackles last year. He's a baller. So impressive for Iowa.
What's been impressive about Iowa is the way that they evaluate their kind of guys. Iowa has a certain trademark. They're looking for certain attributes. They're not necessarily going to always cash in on the 4- and 5-star guys, but their development system and their commitment to what they do in the weight room and professional development continues to turn out draft pick after draft pick, All-American after All-American, and I think we have to give Iowa their respect on the national level.
No doubt, especially when you look at Riley Moss being the only walk-on I believe, on this list. But you know what's scary about that? They signed a 5-star defensive back, Xavier Nwankpa, last year. So now you combine what they're doing in recruiting with that development track record, and that's a scary combination for Iowa.
And they've got a 5-star offensive lineman committed there as well. So you know how they do their offensive line at Iowa. It's going to be, if they can get some of these big-time guys and develop them, they're going to be a problem in the Big Ten.
Absolutely, but they haven't compromised on what got them there. So they're still signing 4- and 5-star guys, but they're still getting walk-ons. They're still finding sleepers every year, and they're turning those guys out. They've had such a strong hit rate on those kinds of players. They have not compromised on that at all. Anything else stand out to you guys about this first and second team defense?
Well, I love Andre Carter out of Army, and he's a guy, when we're talking about under-the-radar guys, I felt like all offseason that Andre Carter is going to play his way into a significant spot in the NFL draft. Now, Army has the whole, you got to do 5 years of service after college. That's going to be an interesting scenario to see, can he get a reprieve, or will they allow him to go into the NFL draft, because he's definitely an elite edge rusher. He's got long arms. He covers a lot of range when he drops back in the passing game. I think that he's a special, special talent, and I'm excited to see what he does this season.
Like anyone else that wasn't on this list that you thought could have made it?
I thought Utah's Clark Phillips III is a guy that should be on this list. I was real impressed with him last year. He had a great Rose Bowl going against Ohio State's explosive offense was very impressive. But I think he should have been on here somewhere. I like his upside. I think he has a chance to be a big-time riser this year, and I think Utah is going to be a very good team this year. So I think they were a little bit underrepresented, but that's Utah's way. That's not the way that they're not a big flashy team, but they have some talent out there in the West Coast, and they're going to be, in my opinion, the favorite to win the Pac-12.
I really like Will McDonald on this list. I don't know if outside of Ames, how many people know what a special player he is, but a great athlete, was a great high school basketball player. They went up to Wisconsin and stole him. Wisconsin did not recruit him until late in the process. That was a great find early on in Matt Campbell's tenure.
And the production that he has at Iowa State playing in a 3-man front is what's impressive, because it's very hard to get to the quarterback playing in a 3-man front. I mean, most pass rushers that are getting all the sacks are playing in a 4-man front. So that makes it even more impressive. And I think, kind of the knock on him was he was a little bit undersized. So hopefully he's been able to put on a little bit of weight, develop a little bit in this offseason, and be he's going to have a big-time year for him, I expect.
So maybe that's why we went 3-3-5 on this list, to have Will McDonald being his natural element.
They got to update these lists, man. I'm telling you, they're outdated.
Carl, I'd be remiss if I didn't let you talk about a St. Louis native there in Antonio Johnson. I think a lot of people, he had a great year last year, came in as a true freshman, but I think bigger things are expected this year.
Antonio Johnson's been a big-time player for a long time. I saw him play in Little League. I watched him all through high school playing for the East St. Louis Flyers. He's been a starter at Texas A&M since very early in his freshman season. He's a guy that's on most people's radars right now as a first-round draft pick. It looks like it's trending that way. His role is going to continue to increase. They've got DJ Durkin now there as the defensive coordinator at Texas A&M. I expect a huge year out of Antonio Johnson. Texas A&M has a lot of big-time, prime-time games on the schedule this year. I look for a huge year from him and a first-round pick to be called.
So let's shift over now to the updated odds to win the Heisman Trophy, and these are from Caesars Sportsbook, and these continue to change, but the latest edition of these, you have C.J. Stroud leading the way at plus 200. When you see that first-team offense and you see all the skill talent he has to work with, that's not a huge surprise, but how do you break down the top two in this list? C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young, the two quarterbacks dueling it out at the top of the Heisman odds.
I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that it's a quarterback's award. I think they're the two best quarterbacks by a long shot, in my opinion. Bryce Young, having won it last year, it's hard to win it twice. It's only been done once. So I think that's kind of the knock on him. Stroud's got just a loaded offense, and they're going to be really, I mean, they're going to be a problem on offense this year. So I think those are very well represented, and I think they're the obvious favorites. And I would expect someone from Ohio State or Alabama to win the Heisman this year.
Plus 2,200 on Will Anderson seems pretty good, right, Carl?
Well, to me, Will Anderson is the best player in all of college football. But Heisman voters have showed us for years that they're not necessarily willing to give it to a defensive guy. Now, you got Stroud and you got Young, and they're going to both have monster seasons. They're surrounded by talent, and they're on the two best teams. But Will Anderson, can he put up the numbers to get him in the Heisman conversation? He may have less sacks than he did a year ago, but still impact the game in a bigger way and be a better football player. He's going to need close to 20 sacks, or right around 20 is going to be the over-under number for him to have a legitimate chance to win the Heisman. And if he can do that, then he can. But he is the best player in the country. Nobody impacts the game. He's on everybody's board, and every team that plays him is scared to death to go against Will Anderson.
So you have Caleb Williams there too. Obviously, I think we know the talent he has, but adjusting to some new surroundings. So how do you feel about his odds going into this year?
I like him. I think next year is probably more of his year than this year. I think they've got they've upgraded their wide receiver unit, obviously with Jordan Addison being there. Lincoln Riley is an incredible offensive play caller. So he's going to have a big year. I mean, USC is going to score a lot of points. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they're going to stop a lot of people on defense. That's kind of yet to be seen. But he's going to put up big numbers. I think next year is the year that I would look for him to probably be likely a favorite for the Heisman. But he's going to be he's a guy that could do it. But USC is going to have to overachieve on the field for him to do it.
So looking at the second part of this list, looking at 6 through 15, if somebody out there wants to throw a flyer out, take a shot on somebody in the later part of this list, you each have somebody here that you think maybe has better odds than what this screen shows.
Well, I would go with Travion Henderson, the running back at Ohio State. They're gonna be on the stage to do it, and if the quarterback doesn't get it, then I think that he will, because he's going to be their primary ball carrier. He'll have over 1,500 yards. He's going to have a bunch of touchdowns. They do have a lot of weapons at the wide receiver spot, but as a running back in this part of the list, I would think that he's the guy that has an opportunity to win it.
Yeah, I've got some money on Will Anderson winning the Heisman, but looking at this list, I'm going to go and put some money on Jackson Smith and Jigba, because he is the truth. I mean, this guy is just an incredible talent. He's the best wide receiver in the country, in my opinion. He dominated last year, and Ohio State gets these receivers open in space. I mean, it's incredible the amount of separation and space that these guys have when they're catching the ball. So he's going to have a big year. Plus 4,000. I'm going to have to I might put some money on that, because I think he could be a surprise guy on here if he can start off quickly. And but as you know, it's a quarterback's award. CJ Stroud, if he has a big year, CJ Stroud's going to have a big year. So it's tough, but he, in my opinion, is a special talent.
There's only one football to go around, unfortunately, in Columbus. A lot of mouths to feed, but a ton of skill talent there. Interesting to me on this list, you have Quinn Ewers, you have Spencer Rattler, you have DJ Uiagalelei. You have 3 guys who were extremely highly rated coming out of high school, who all are kind of facing crossroad make-or-break years, right? Do any of those 3 stand out to you guys as somebody who could get back on track this year?
Well, I would go with Spencer Rattler. I think that Spencer Rattler is hungry to prove himself. He lost his job last year in the most embarrassing way. He's at South Carolina now with an opportunity to play in the SEC. I think that he's motivated. I think they have the offense in place. He has some good skill talent around him. They're really strong at the tight end position at South Carolina. I look for Spencer Rattler to be highly motivated to prove that he still belongs in the list of elite quarterbacks.
I would put some of Carl's money on some of those guys maybe, but I wouldn't put any of my money on it. I think if I had to take a flyer on any of these guys, it'd probably be Tyler Van Dyke. I think he's got an incredible skill set. Miami looks like they're going to be a pretty good team this year. He would be the flyer that I would take and put a few bucks on. But on this list here, I wouldn't bet on any of these quarterbacks. I mean, they're good players, but I don't think they're going to win the Heisman. I don't
Unless
think
it's Carl's money, in which
Carl's money. I just don't think their teams are going to be good enough to get them there, because you got to win and you got to be one of the best few teams in the country. And so Jackson Smith and Jigma is the guy that I would pick.
Well, I'm excited that we're talking about this, because if we are, it means football is right around the corner. College football just on the verge of being here in the same room for the second straight day. Blake Brockermeyer, Carl Reed, thanks for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe to the videos on 24/7 Sports' YouTube channel. The Block airs every Monday through Thursday, so you'll be seeing a lot more of these guys. Thanks for watching.